The Battle of Los Angeles is known more for the UFO movie than the actual event. That wasn't real. Or was it? Here's what you don't know about the battle that the Army would like you to forget. It was February 25th, 1942. America had officially entered World War II 3 months earlier. The West Coast was antsy, just waiting to be the next stop on Japan's Pacific bombing fest.
Anti-aircraft guns have been placed all around the city, bunkers have been built, and air raid protocols have been drilled into the population.
On that particular night, there were various reports that came in about weird lights or UFOs or phantom planes or a big floating object resembling a balloon. The LA wasn't just going to sit there and become Pearl Harbor all over again, so the coastal military fired at whatever was or wasn't out there from about 2:15 a.m. to 4 a.m., popping off around 1,400 shells in the process. You know what they hit?
Nothing!
Secretary of the Navy Frank Knox called the whole thing war nerves. But before we get too judgy here, there had been reports of attacks on New York in previous days and weeks. They were false, but they were reports. People were on edge. Nevertheless, the military's rapid, prolonged response to absolutely nothing boggles the mind.
Where did I shoot there? I don't know!
But there was something up there. We now know that. To those enlightened folks, the answer is obvious. It was aliens, duh. What else could appear on radar, get hit with a barrage of American military muscle, and then not exist? Look, we're not joking.
Some of the eyewitness statements help fuel this theory that this is a UFO.
According to a 1942 New York Times piece, first reports were that a big floating object resembling a balloon was seen in the sky. You may think of the UFO era starting in 1947 with Kenneth Arnold, but they were around during World War II for sure. Besides Dave Grohl, do you know what a Foo Fighter is? That's what pilots called any object that was flying and unidentified. We're not saying it was aliens, but it was aliens. And there were people back in 1942 who thought that same thing. Well, at least some people. Citizens called in reports of Japanese paratroopers diving out of squadrons of planes, or one plane. And on the supposedly rational, well-trained military side of things, artilleryman Charles Patrick described what he saw in a letter, writing, "I could see 6 planes, and shells were bursting all around them. Naturally, all of us fellows were anxious to get our 2 cents worth in, and when the command came, everybody cheered like a son of a gun."
You've got these orange tracer lights in the air, bursts in the sky. No one had ever seen anything like this in the United States.
Coastal Artillery Corps Colonel John G. Murphy later admitted, "Imagination could have easily disclosed many shapes in the sky in the midst of that weird symphony of noise and color. It's just odd that people, including a military man, thought they saw paratroopers. It speaks more to the chaos of the moment for everyone." So someone saw something. The lights went out in LA and the anti-aircraft lit up the skies. Why did the Army keep firing for 90 minutes? I mean, 2 minutes of artillery fire before someone waves their hands around and yells false alarm, that would make sense. But over an hour and a half non-stop without anyone pulling the plug? How is that possible? Well, besides the reports of aliens and paratroopers, there's another reason. You see, a ceasefire order did apparently come down the pipe within minutes, but there were, quote, difficulties in communication. And rather than admit a mistake, U.S. Secretary of War Henry L. Stimson doubled down, making the excuse, "It is better to be too alert than not alert enough." And that's not all. He claimed that although there were no Japanese planes, there were at least 15 commercial planes flown by, quote, enemy agents that had infiltrated Los Angeles airspace. You might think that's a crazy claim, but people took it seriously. How seriously? Well, according to the Los Angeles County Times, the LA County Sheriff thought he was helping the cause when he had valiantly helped the FBI round up several Japanese nurserymen and gardeners who were supposedly caught in the act of signaling the enemy aviators.
Cheese! Okay.
As you've probably guessed, they actually weren't. Radar is the first line of defense against enemy aircraft, and the Army claimed they spotted something that night. The technology was new, and while incoming planes had been spotted before the Pearl Harbor attacks, personnel didn't realize what they were seeing and lost the advantage. That's maybe understandable, but why not send up a plane or two to check things out? Or, here's a nutty idea, shoot down the enemy. Yes, it was dark, but there were spotlights strafing the sky, and yes, US planes needed to stay out of range of our anti-aircraft guns, but that was entirely possible. But as a dogfight would be dangerous for civilians below, so would anti-aircraft debris. And that happened. The debris damage totaled around $500 in 1942 money, a bit over $9 grand today. It almost feels a bit like, we have the guns, we might as well shoot them, to us looking back at it today. The one-sided Battle of Los Angeles resulted in at least 5 American deaths. We know of 2 from heart attacks from the stress of the bombardment and 3 that perished in car accidents. The entire area was in total blackout, so driving wasn't easy. After the attack, the Army's Western Defense Command stated matter-of-factly, and without apology, although reports were conflicting and every effort is being made to ascertain the facts, it is clear that no bombs were dropped and no planes were shot down. No kidding. In 1992, the Los Angeles Times shed light on the actual causes of the incident with the help of a post-war Army document that boiled the cause of the fiasco down to a couple of, in layman's terms, major mistakes.
This is what we used to call back in the Army a foobar.
Can we actually determine what happened on that fateful night? First, a number of weather balloons were released above LA. Those balloons carried lights that ground personnel mistook for Japanese planes. Then shell bursts illuminated by searchlights were also mistaken for enemy aircraft. So it wasn't aliens after all. Darn. Anyway, we don't want to make light of the fact that there were deaths because of this fiasco. The real answer as to why all the confusion and false reports and aliens is simply pride. The US Army didn't want people to let their guard down. It was a war, and an uncertain one at that point for sure. And the Army would rather have the American people thinking the Japanese were out there waiting to pounce. Good for morale, I guess.